Hello and welcome to Juliet and Lucy's Quiet Leadership Revolution, the podcast for senior and aspiring leaders who want to make their voice heard and their impact felt through thoughtful, reflective, confident leadership. I'm Juliet Corbett. I'm an executive coach and strategist, and I work one-to-one with senior leaders, guiding them to find their strategic focus, empower their teams, and regain control over their time.
And I'm Lucy Gower. I'm a facilitator, trainer and coach, and I empower leaders to build their happy, confident and high-performing teams. Welcome to this episode today, which is the third in this series on shifting your perspective. And today we're going to be talking about whether leaders should be prepared to do everything. Maybe there's a kind of little clue in how we've set up that title, but Juliet, what's your starting point for whether leaders should be prepared to do everything?
So I think, this question actually came to mind because I've had a couple of conversations with coaching clients recently, and there's a really important element of this question that confuses people, that you get tripped up on really, really easily. So my starter for 10 is going to be around the fact that the word prepared to do everything, that preparedness is really important. And then the question of whether then you should be doing everything. So I think there's two different elements to this. Should a leader be prepared to do everything? And then should a leader actually do everything, which is what I tend to see when I'm working with clients who are pretty stressed out because they are trying to do way too much and could be delegating a lot more. Lucy, what are your thoughts as an opening?
Yeah, I think very similar in that being prepared to do everything is different to actually doing everything. So I feel very strongly that I wouldn't ask somebody to do something that I'm not prepared to do myself. That doesn't mean to say that I'm going to go and do the thing. And as a leader, you might be prepared to roll your sleeves up and get on the front line if required. Doesn't mean to say that's what you need to do as your job right there and then in that moment. But there's something about not asking somebody to do something that you're not prepared to do yourself. And in my mind, that's about whether something is reasonable or unreasonable, or asking too much of somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I think back to my own leadership, the times when I've asked somebody to, so I've delegated a task, asked somebody to do something, and then I give it flexibility and or like caveats. So that's all to do with how I would feel if I was given that job. So for example, if I'm asking someone to do something around data inputting or kind of rejigging fields in the database, which I know can get very tedious and can actually cause repetitive strain injury if you just do it continuously, then I would be really careful as I'm delegating to talk about, just do an hour on this a day. Don't do it all in one go. Do it in little bits and pieces. Like, don't sit down and do everything at once. And then to maybe talk to them about what they could do to break it up a bit and to make it more interesting for them. And maybe even, saying it's okay for you to put your headphones in as long as the accuracy is there. It's fine if you're listening to music while you're doing, if that's how you want to do this rather boring piece of work. That is me as a leader, putting myself in their shoes and empathizing that this might not be the most exciting task I'm delegating to them, and therefore opening a conversation around what flexibility there is in the timeliness of them, the way they do it and the way they complete the task.
Although on that, like I agree with you, and helping somebody to manage the task in the best way that they can is really important. There's something in there though that sometimes we might delegate something and the person is delighted to have an hour where I can sit with my headphones in and not have to talk to anyone and get on with this really detailed piece of work. So within that, what we're prepared to do and what other people are prepared to do and what we find interesting and exciting and what someone else might find interesting and exciting as a piece of work could be entirely different.
Yes. So opening up that conversation so that they can express their own kind of ways of making things better, or their excitement of the task, which I might have really not particularly enjoyed myself. You're absolutely right.
Exactly. And how wonderful that you're there, off you go to delegate this task that you're thinking, oh, this is a bit boring. I've done this in the past. I'll be prepared to do it myself. And the person that you're having the conversation with about this piece of work is joyful that they're going to be able to do it. Marvelous. It's like,
and one of the many benefits of having a diverse team. that you're leading as
Yeah,
well, because people are taking different levels of enjoyment from different tasks too. Yeah.
exactly. That's what we're aiming for, even though you might be baffled by it.
Yes, being open to the fact that other people enjoy different things the way you enjoy them. Absolutely. And actually, I have to
Yeah,
admit, secretly, like I do quite enjoy a bit of data entry. It's quite
I know.
fulfilling sometimes.
I know this about you, Juliet.
You do. My obsession with spreadsheets might have given that away. Um, so there's
And can I just say something on
yeah
spreadsheets? And that is why I think we work really well together. Because I'm not a brilliant spreadsheet person. You've helped me be better. But like that's kind of like the point, right? We're
yeah
very different in how we approach the world,
yeah
which is why I get so much out of having these sorts of conversations.
precisely. And there are many things that you do that I wouldn't necessarily be able to do as well myself. I'm not even going to list those things right now, but yes, many things that I wouldn't be particularly good at that you absolutely excel at, Lucy. So there's
Oh,
this element of being prepared to do everything. Where do people get caught up then? Because that seems like it may not be completely obvious to other people, but that seems fairly kind of obvious to
yeah,
me, or fairly kind of
yeah.
basic, being prepared to do everything. Where do people get themselves caught up in knots on this?
I think that there's something that's in the word should. I don't really like the word should, whether we should do something or whether we shouldn't do something. It
Yeah.
implies some sort of judgment in there. And I think that there is something around, should we be doing this? Should we be leading by example by doing the data
Mm.
entry, for example? Should it be our job to make sure that we are rolling up our sleeves and getting on with everything with everybody else? And this kind of this feeling of judgment, either judgment that we are judging ourselves about what we should or shouldn't be doing, or what other people are thinking about us in terms of how we work, how we operate, and how we lead.
Yeah. A lot of it is down to judgment, isn't it? And wanting to make sure that you're role modeling to others in a way that's going to actually lead the whole team forward. So that idea of being prepared to
Yeah.
do something, or being prepared to do anything, is around role modeling to everyone else in the team that no one of us is too important to roll the sleeves up and do this
Yes.
work. No one of
Yeah.
us is better than the other. So it's role modeling that
Yeah.
feeling of equality and fairness and so on. And then when
Yes.
you, as a leader, if you start to take on too much yourself, so you're so worried about wanting to be role modeling that fairness and equality, that can then go into overdrive almost, and then you're not role
Mm-hmm.
modeling the ability to strategically prioritize what needs to happen and who's the best place to do each of those tasks, and to have that strategic focus of what you're going to be doing as a team and who's going to be doing it.
Yeah. So actually, as a leader, role modeling, we're a team and we're here to, back to strategy, Juliet,
Mm.
to achieve what we've set out to do. All of us have different strengths, and how do we play to all of those? But we all work together to achieve it. And then there's something around role modeling, how we prioritize, what are the things that we say no to doing in order that we can do the things that are going to get us there most quickly, and how do we communicate that? Because that's the bit where I think we fall down quite easily on this inability that lots of the people that I work with, and I myself can struggle with, is being able to say no
Yeah,
to things,
yeah,
and that can feel really difficult.
it can. And that word everything in our episode title is quite important here, isn't it? Like no team should be trying to do everything. So it's not even that a leader, it's not about the preparedness of the leaders to do everything, but no team should be trying to do everything. You should, as a group, be prioritizing and saying no to some things. And I think you're right that can feel hard, and it kind of goes against, for some of us, there's that strong sense of wanting to please others, and so saying
Mm.
no can challenge that, and it can look like you're not being part of the team by saying no. There are various reasons why saying no can
Mm-hmm.
feel hard, can't it? Feel really difficult.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it can. It can also feel really refreshing and excellent. Like if you ask somebody to do something and they are able to say, no, I can't do it because, or help me understand why that's important to do it
Yeah.
now, or what are the time frames of that? Why is that important? and have a discussion about it can be
Yeah.
really helpful,
Yeah.
rather than somebody said yes, so it's not on your list anymore, but that person who said yes is just holding on to that, thinking, how on earth am I going to do this? I've pleased Lucy because I've said yes, but actually I can't do it. That's a terrible situation to
Yeah.
be in, because I can't support them because I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And they're weighted down with all the other things they said yes to as well. And I see that play out a lot with a lot of the clients that I work with.
Yeah.
Just too much on their plate.
Yeah.
Because they haven't been able to say no.
Yeah. And there are different flavors of no, isn't there? There's a kind of a
Yeah.
no, I don't think I can do the task exactly as you've spelt it out, but I can do it this way instead. Does that work? There's a no, I
Yeah.
can't do this right now. Could this wait until
Yeah.
next week? There's a no, because I'm not really sure that we need to do it anymore because something's changed in the systems or the technology or the
Yeah.
goals. So you're questioning the validity of needing to do it. I mean, it's often we don't always need to use the word no. Normally,
Absolutely.
we're doing to identifying what kind of no, what kind of resistance am I feeling to this? Is it because I don't know what the purpose is? I don't think this is the most efficient way of doing it. And then it's framing some open questions to ask the person who's delegating to you. I'd just like some clarification, and then asking the questions around that.
Yeah, I suppose there's something about not instantly defaulting to yes and then trying to figure out how on earth you're going to do it later. And a technique that I learned a few years ago is the yes if. Yes, I can do that if the deadline is in 2 weeks time rather than 2 days time. Yes, if I don't do this piece of work, if this what you've just asked me to do is more important. And the yes if can feel much better than the no.
Yeah.
But you're still negotiating and having a conversation about boundaries and what's okay and what isn't okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when this kind of connects to the role modeling that we talked about a few moments ago as well, that as a leader, role modeling that it's okay to say no, and how you say no and the ways that you frame no to either other teams, so to the leader's peers across other groups, or to the leader's line manager, kind of up the organization. So there's something here around being able to role model. And then you can say to your team, actually, we need to pause this other project because we need to help this other team with something. And it's not that I've just automatically said yes because somebody asked and I'm kind of defaulting to just pleasing others. You're then able to explain to your team, actually, I know this isn't ideal, but actually these are the reasons that this needs to happen for the organization's benefit. And this is how we're going to go about doing that, so that there's a feeling amongst the team that the leader has advocated for that team and has been able to negotiate the yeses and the nos along the way in a strategic way as well.
Yeah. And being able to role model that is as important as being able to role model that I'm approachable, I can roll my sleeves up. If you need help, ask me and I can, I'll do what I can to help you to get on with it.
100%.
When you were speaking just now, it occurred to me that I certainly remember when I was working in an organization and getting promoted through different levels of management, one of the things that I was utterly unaware of that my managers before me had been doing was doing a lot of saying no's to hold a safe space so the team could get on with their work. So actually, if you're listening to this and perhaps you're an aspiring leader, the context isn't just around delegating with your team. What I tend to find as you move up an organization, you're getting lots of priorities that you're needing to manage, and to be able to say no up and across to your peers to keep your team focused on strategically what's important becomes a bigger amount of the work that you're doing, which actually comes back to things we talked about previously about having really good relationships. When you've got a good relationship with someone, it's much easier to have an open conversation about whether something's possible or not. When you don't know them, that can feel fractious.
Yeah, absolutely. I sometimes call this umbrella management. I actually don't know whether I made that up or whether I read it somewhere, so apologies if I should be crediting someone else, but umbrella leadership, where the leader acts as an umbrella for their team, preventing, and I'm going to try really hard not to swear here because we're not going to put an explicit filter on this, but where the team has all sorts of rubbish falling from the sky onto them, and where the leader actually uses that umbrella to protect the team, to enable the team to stay really focused on what it is they need to be doing without being distracted by all of the other stuff that's going on around them.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
exactly it.
yeah, and then the ability to negotiate what comes in through that umbrella, as tasks that your team is going to undertake, and what's actually going to be deflected off that umbrella because you're going to very strategically and constructively say no to that particular request of your team. And what can go wrong there is if the leader is trying to be so strong for their team, trying to defend and advocate for their team, what can either happen is that their peers or their line manager get a feeling that they're constantly defending their team, and it can feel quite negative, and they're not negotiating effectively with those peers and those line managers around what their team can actually do and the flexibility that team needs. Or sometimes it's because there's a lot of emotional stuff going on, and the leader just absorbs all of the stress and all of the emotion into that umbrella that they're struggling to hold over their team. And that as a result, then it feels like there's an increasing amount of stretch and strain that leader
Yeah,
feels under.
yeah, absolutely. And you saying that has reminded me of when I was in a middle manager role, and my line manager, I found out much later, was excellent at umbrella management,
Mm.
to the point where I wasn't involved at all in some of the, I'm going to say, fights that they were having higher up the organization. And in this particular scenario, what that resulted in is me not knowing about all the hard work that they were doing on mine and the team's behalf, and them not communicating very well with me and the rest of the team, and this sort of disconnect. And I remember really clearly having a conversation about, can you let us in because we can help you? I've
Yeah.
got a sense that there's a lot going on here, and
Yeah.
there's things that you can't tell us, which is understandable, but let us help you to be able to do this because we're a whole team. And I think that it can be really easy as a leader to, it's a difficult balance, because you want to be able to lead and set a good role model, and then there's lots about being vulnerable and helping people to step up.
Yeah.
And it's so context specific about how much is appropriate to share and how much it isn't, but that's definitely part of a leadership journey, to be able to broach that. And I suppose that's a lot of the coaching conversations that I know you and I
Yeah.
both have.
Yeah, as leaders feeling when that they haven't got that balance right, they can feel intuitively that something's not quite right. And as you
Yeah,
say, sometimes members of the teams just feeling the intuition is telling me this doesn't feel right. This doesn't like feel like this is a
yeah,
particularly fulfilling way for each of us to turn up at work. And yet it's quite hard sometimes to have the self-awareness if it's just you and you're not sharing with someone else as to exactly what it is that you need to shift and change to make
yeah,
that feel more sustainable going forwards.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely. So relating that back to this kind of idea of should a leader be prepared to do everything, I think there's a nice balance here, isn't there? Role modeling seems to cover all the different elements. There's a nice balance of being able to say no and role modeling saying no, of being able to be prepared and role modeling that fairness and equality and teamwork, that you're prepared to step forwards and do
yeah,
anything. So it
yeah.
actually encompasses quite a few different topics that we've covered on the podcast before, actually, especially around delegation as well. And I know actually it was our second ever episode, Lucy, around whether you should be delegating or whether you could be delegating more, avoiding the word should, as you've mentioned earlier.
Yes.
And what's stopping you from delegating more, I think, is a key subtopic in here. So maybe go back and have a listen
Yeah,
if you're thinking specifically about
yeah,
delegation kind of mindsets.
yeah. And I think there's something in there of, if you find it difficult to say no, there's something about flipping that around and thinking about all the reasons why you would say
Yes.
yes. And they're not necessarily, it might be because you're excited about it, or because you don't want to feel left out or left behind, or you want to please people. Those reasons for saying yes don't necessarily have to be positive reasons, but they can help you to flip around about why you would why you find it difficult.
Yeah, I
to
love
say
that.
no.
Yes, if that's a really nice way of framing it. So even if you're just brainstorming for yourself, how do I respond to this request? What would come after that? Yes, if. What would make it possible? What would make it something that you could get really kind of into and excited about, and kind of playing around with deadlines and this project and the other projects that you're working on and all the rest of it, and thinking about what would make it possible for you to say yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, excellent. So what do you
So
think you'd like people to take away as key topics from this time?
I think my two things are that being prepared to do everything is not the same as actually doing everything. And experiment with the yes if. The more you practice, the better you become at things, and the language that you use starts to feel more comfortable for you. So practice yes if.
Yeah.
How about you, Juliet? What would you like
very
people to
similar.
take
So I
away?
would say definitely that idea that there's this balance between the role modeling of being prepared to everything and the role modeling of the strategic focus, the prioritization, the ability to say no. So I think one of the things I like people to take away is to realize that whatever you do role models to the team what you think is great leadership. And so what is it that you're role modeling, and how could you shift the kind of reframe it almost as what you could be saying no to, or what you could be delegating. Yeah. And
Absolutely.
Lucy, I know you help teams and individuals with this quite frequently. I know when we suggested it as a topic, I think you were yes, we definitely need to do this one. How do you help teams with this?
Help leaders of teams with one-to-one coaching, and I run training about holding boundaries, saying no, being able to prioritize. So do get in touch if this is something that you as a leader or your team is struggling with. Juliet, how can you help people listening with this topic?
I help people to senior leaders as kind of one-to-one coaching to help them see where they're struggling, and to see with a bit more clarity what they could shift and change to make their working life a little bit more seamless, a bit more kind of impactful and confidence based. So helping leaders to see where they're potentially role modeling slightly the wrong things, or slightly where they could shift that so they're not having to do everything. Frequent conversation that comes up in my one-to-one coaching. To reach out and let me know if that could be a useful conversation for you. So thank you for spending this time with us today. Don't forget that if you want to make your voice heard and your impact felt, you need to give yourself the space to think, the courage to lead, and the confidence to adapt. I'm Juliet Corbett, an executive coach and strategist working one-to-one with senior leaders.
And I'm Lucy Gower, a facilitator, trainer and coach helping leaders to develop high-performing teams. Join us next time for the Quiet Leadership Revolution.